January 10th, our weekly broadcast of the Logos Experiment here on URTV. We appreciate all of you that take the time to tune in and view the Logos Experiment. The Logos Experiment, the name comes from conversation, meaning a conversation, and that's what we hope to do, is have a conversation with our viewers. So this is a live call-in show. The number is 505-2806, 505-2806, or you can email your questions to theriverasheville@gmail.com, theriverasheville@gmail.com. Well, if you're living in the Asheville area, you may be actually stuck at your house with a cup of hot coffee or hot cocoa. We've been kind of inundated with some rough weather here the past few weeks, and this past Monday, yesterday, I guess it was Monday, Sunday going into Monday, we encountered quite a bit of snowfall. If you're there in your home, I hope you're safe and comfortable. And without any further ado, let's move on with continue our subject from the last time we were together. We've been speaking about Jesus. We've been speaking about this person called Jesus. And I hope, have established that historically speaking, that Jesus did indeed exist. And I've tried to lay down a thought process that simply says that if he did exist, who was he? What did he have to say? And we began looking at some of those things. And I made the comment, and I will continue to make the comment, that either he was telling the truth or he was not a good guy at all, because to be honest with you, if he was telling some of the things that he was saying, if they were not true, they would indeed be ludicrous, to be quite honest with you. We began talking last week a little bit about what this man, Jesus, claimed, not about himself necessarily. We moved on past that, but what he actually said about the coming end of the world, the end of the age. And we started off by looking at Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3. When the disciples come to Jesus and tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So they are specifically asking a person whom they have put their faith and their trust in, who they have perceived to be omnipotent in their mind, and certainly in my mind, he was omnipotent. And he was omniscient in that he knew everything. And they had approached this man that they believed knew everything, and frankly asked him a pretty pointed question. about the end of the age. And for the next, few chapters in Matthew, Jesus spends his time speaking about that particular thing. We saw last week that in Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 and 5, he said that many will come and deceive many, saying that they are Christ. That whenever that age was, whatever the end of the, quote, world was, end quote, that he would, that the world would be full of people claiming to be Christ. And we have seen this. We've seen this with the Jim Jones of the world, the David Koresh, we mentioned them, but there are others out there right now who claim not only to be spokesmen for God, but they also claim to be Jesus himself. They claim to be the Messiah. And this is just a reminder to us that this would be one of the things that would be going on in the last latter days. Now, I again, didn't wake up under a rock last night. I'm well aware that there have been people claiming to be Christ probably since beginning of time, or the beginning at least of this age, have claimed to be the Messiah. I don't think that Jesus here is presenting something that would be new to us. I think what he is saying is he uses the word many, and I think that's the point. I don't think that he's saying that from time to time somebody will come and claim to be me or claim to be the Christ or the Messiah. I think indeed what he's saying is that would increase, and there would be many more than say on a normal period of time. So we saw that. We talked a little bit about verses 6 and 7 as well, and you'll see wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And he tells us that in that particular day, that wars would be very prevalent. In his day, when Jesus actually walked the earth, some historians claim there were no wars. It was very uncommon. Whether or not that's true, I'll be honest, I haven't investigated it thoroughly, but I have read that during the time of Jesus, those 33 and a half years, there were no conflicts. So to say wars to this group of people was certainly a surprising element. At the time that they lived, Rome pretty much ruled the world, and there wasn't a whole lot anybody could do about it. But Jesus says that there'll be wars, but not only wars, but rumors of war. We see that today. We are currently in a battle in Afghanistan. We are in Iraq. There's rumors of our involvement in North Korea. With that conflict, and those are only three that come to mind. I know, I'm aware that there are conflicts not just involving the United States, but involving other nations all over the world. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's what Jesus was saying. But I noticed that the verse 8 says that all of these are the beginning of sorrows. And in verse 6 it says, but these things must come to be, and the end is not yet. So he talks about the spiritual deception. He talks about the international or worldwide conflict that would be taking place. And he also talks about natural disasters. There would be famines, pestilence, excuse me, or pestilences, depending on which version you have. There'll be earthquakes in very different places. Pestilence is very simply an outbreak of disease. I guess we could just sit and talk about that for a while, actually. I mean, there's diseases that we're familiar with that take the lives of people. There are certainly diseases we are not familiar with that most certainly take the lives of people. New diseases are coming up all the time. In the world of terrorism, we hear a lot about anthrax. We hear about other genetic type things that are being developed by countries. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly that rumor's out there, that news is out there that it's a possibility. So there would be pestilence. There'd be famine. We see famine. We're blessed here in the United States. We don't really see a lot of famine on the scale I think that the Scripture's talking about here. Certainly there are hungry people out there. Our church this past weekend took the time Sunday afternoon to go out to a particular spot here in downtown and feed hungry people. Nobody's denying that there are hungry people in the United States. But when we talk about famine, we're talking about a whole different, to me, a whole different animal. We're talking about the idea of that you see on television commercials sometimes for some of these international agencies where people are literally starving to death. We see this a lot in the Northern African continent, in the country of the Sudan and Darfur and Ethiopia and places like that, but also in India and different spots. We see that a lot. Famine is becoming a more common thing. We have a tendency here in the United States, I think, sometimes to think, well, I'm not hungry, so the world must not be hungry. And that's a dangerous train of thought. Also, he mentioned that there would be earthquakes. And these earthquakes would take place in many various places. Earthquakes were, of course, not uncommon in the days that Jesus lived. But they didn't have the news agencies to report them. They certainly wouldn't have known of an earthquake on the North American continent, likely not. But as we have viewed our history that we have been able to view, especially with the advent of mass communication, just the last 50 years, earthquakes seem to be on the rise. And it's not just earthquakes that appear in the common areas, the common fault lines. They are appearing in uncommon areas. Last week I mentioned that I was kind of surprised driving down the road myself to hear that Indiana experienced a small earthquake or earth tremor here, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. We're hearing more and more of that. I believe Jesus was talking here about earthquakes that would take the lives of people, because he did mention over here that these were the beginning of sorrows. So I think that these are, in particular, are pretty dramatic earthquakes, and I don't doubt that we're going to see more of that happen. If you look in verse 9, if you have your Bible, Matthew chapter 24 and verse 9, and they will deliver you up to tribulation, kill you, and you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Now, in particular, there's no question, theologically, Jesus is speaking about the nation of Israel here. But in general, we are seeing a rise in the persecution of Christian people around the world. Martyrdom is becoming more and more prevalent. I received an email from a source that I consider fairly reliable about the extremist, if you will, Muslims and the extremist Islamics attacking Christian churches and killing people in Iran, Iraq. Certainly you are knowledgeable of the incident that took place in Egypt near Cairo that there were Christians killed, and they were killed simply because of their faith. I see, again, not trying to over spiritualize anything, but that being said, there's no question that Israel as a nation is being somewhat persecuted, if you will, which may indeed be what Jesus was speaking of here. The Iranians want them destroyed. The Russians have come alongside and have empowered the Iranians to be able to possibly someday do that. The Muslim world in general wants them done away with. And so we can see that when Jesus said, "You'll be hated of all nations because of me," we can see that as a reality, as something that is indeed happening. Look in verse 10 and 12. And many will be offended and betray one another, and they will hate one another. Many false prophets will deceive many, because lawlessness will abound. The love of many will grow cold. We are seeing in our country the beginnings of what some people would call apostasy. We're beginning to see the removal, if you will, of the God factor in our country. And this, I believe, is contributing to exactly what Jesus said here, that people would turn away from faith, but secondly, they would betray each other, prophets would arise, and that the love of many would wax cold, and people would become lawless. The prophets, the false prophets, who are they? People that speak anything, in my opinion, that speak anything other than what Jesus spoke are considered, by him, they were considered false prophets. I think it's interesting to note that he says, "He who endures to the end shall be saved, and the gospel of the kingdom will be preached to the whole world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." So Jesus has a little concise message here, and he simply says that those that demonstrate faithfulness will be the ones who are indeed the true followers. But then he makes another really bold statement. He says that the gospel will be preached in all the world. Really, before maybe 1980 or 1990 maybe, that statement would have been foolish. But because of the advent of worldwide media, I can text now an event that, if the event was important enough, that text message could be picked up and sent around the world in an instant. I certainly don't travel in the circles where I would do that or could do that. But if I did see something that was worldwide worthy, a simple text message from my cell phone could get around the world in an instant. You could put something on Facebook and everybody would know it. And the truth is that's just about how the gospel of Jesus Christ is being presented now. It literally is everywhere. It's on the worldwide internet. It's on the world, I guess we call it worldwide media, on cable television and broadcast television, radio. There are radio stations that literally broadcast into areas before not even men up until recent times ever went. But now you can take a radio and you can hear the gospel. I want to say a couple of things to you this evening about some other things that Jesus mentioned later in this chapter. He mentions in verses 32 and 30 through 34, learn of the parable of the fig tree, when its branches already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you'll know that summer is near. See also, when you see all of these things, know that it is near, it is at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away till these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. When we're talking about bold statements that Jesus made, this is a bold statement. Working backwards, he says, the heavens and the earth will vanish, but the things that I tell you will indeed come to pass. They will happen. Now, again, that's one of those things that if he were a good man, if he were simply a good teacher, this would probably separate him from being a good teacher, because these things are hard things. These are things that would probably make a lot of people, and do in our day and time, make a lot of people think that he was crazy. He was a lunatic. Who could possibly say that whatever I say will happen if everything else is done away with? What I say will happen. Well, he says that about this particular statement, that when the fig tree, when its branches become tender and puts forth leaves, you'll know that summer is nigh. Some controversy here as to what he means. I understand that. I personally believe that what Jesus is speaking about here is simply the budding of the fig tree being the energizing and the redevelopment of the nation of Israel. Took place in 1948. And is when Israel declared herself a nation. In and of itself, a miracle. The Jewish or Israeli people were scattered about the whole world, had no homeland, and historically speaking, this may indeed be the only time that we've ever seen in history a group of people regather themselves into a nation that had been destroyed thousands of years, 1,500 years or so before, or 2,000 years before. They were done away with. They were gone. They were not a nation any longer. And typically in history, we find that when a nation is done away with over that period of time, it's gone forever. But not in this case. And it could well be that this is exactly what Jesus was speaking about, that the fig tree, the nation of Israel, would again bloom, would again bring forth leaves. And when that happened, Jesus said to be aware, be cognizant, be alert, because that is the time that the summer is nigh. And he made another very bold statement. He said, assuredly, I tell you, most affirmatively, I truly tell you this. This is important, that this generation will not pass away until all of these things come to pass. What things? The things we were just talking about. So before that generation is no longer around, Jesus makes a very bold claim. He says that this or these things will come to pass, and they will happen. Well, we could talk some more, actually, about some things that that Jesus claimed, and we probably will, about the end times. I brought that whole point up to bring up this point, not to teach prophecy. I'm not a prophecy teacher at all. I know a little bit about prophecy. I just believe the Word. I'm just a Bible teacher, plain and simple. I brought it up again, not to teach prophecy, but to tell you that if we take a look at our world events and what's going on in the world today and compare them to what this man Jesus claimed nearly 2,000 years ago, that if we compare the two together, we can see that somehow and some way he had an insight to things that they did not have an insight to. Many of these things that he mentioned, while they were known, they were not common. Famine was not a common occurrence in their day. Yeah, there were people that were hungry and that sort of thing, but not famine like we know today. Certainly earthquakes were not unheard of, but not to the degree they are today. And we could go down the list again, and I won't take your time away from you to do that. I just want you to simply know that as we go through here and we study, was Jesus a person? Did he live? And I think we can conclude he did live. Then the next thing we can conclude is he had some very difficult and interesting things to say. And that his very words, if we compare them to things going on around us today, his very words spoken 2,000 years ago, again, and I know I'm beating a horse to death here, but his very words authenticate that there was obviously something unique and different about this man. For those who believe that some of the Gospels were written long after Jesus was alive, and they kind of put these things in there for him, then whoever those people were pretty sharp, because they knew about things that were going to happen long before they happened. Now, I prefer to believe that Jesus existed, that he was indeed who he said he was, and I believe that by faith. And I also believe by faith that the things that he spoke of make him an authentic person to be believed. Excuse me. We want to again encourage you that if you have questions, please feel free to email us. We can be reached at theriverasheville@gmail.com. You can call us at 348-4703. I also would like to mention to you that the River Church of Asheville currently meets at 10:30 on Sunday mornings, and we are at 930 Swannanoa River Road, and we'd be honored to have you. We're not particular about your belief system. We're not particular about how you dress or how you look. We're just concerned about your heart, and we'd like to say that to you. Also like to mention, if you're out there, you're listening, and you have some musical ability, we are currently looking for some musicians to help us with our worship on Sunday mornings. We'd be, again, glad to hear from you. And we're also currently looking for some different projects that we can get ourselves on and do some outreach with. And if you know of any of those things, again, theriverasheville@gmail.com, and certainly call us at 348-4703, and we'd be glad to speak with you. It's been my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate those of you who call in on a regular or view us on a regular basis and call in on a regular basis. Thanks for being with us, and thank you to URTV for this opportunity to be with you with the Logos Experiment.